Exactly.
Wow. Hi guys, we are back, and oh my goodness, thank you so much for bearing with us and all the tips. I guarantee you that Laura has gone to her car in the heat. She's come back in the house. She's gone back out to the car as we were trying to sort this out. Now I'm just so thankful that she didn't give up. And yeah, so we are ready to start this live. As we were saying, we are talking today about dispelling the refugee narrative, and I'm here with Laura Robertson, an amazing woman. As I said before, she has made time to be here with us today. She is literally grieving, and yeah, so we're pretty special. We feel special at Her Story Matters, and we want to thank you so much for taking this time, um, especially during this time, and for sharing your story. So, without further ado, I just want you to tell us a bit about yourself and what you're currently doing.
Thank you. I am Laura Robertson, success mindset and business coach. I am currently a certified coach, trainer, and speaker through the John Maxwell Group. And I run a business with my daughter, Asia. It's a beauty business, beauty, branding, and providing business solutions for entrepreneurs. So we are on location right now. This is where I'm at the office, but our office has a makeover room and also photography and video in here. So, but my role as a coach, trainer, and speaker, I help women build their confidence and help them find their success through personally and professionally reach their full potential.
Thank you so much. I think before we go on, I'm just going to pull this up because I don't want y'all to forget this, right? I have two of your friends who've offered for me to go to Atlanta and Georgia, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I have it here on the comments, and I'm going to screenshot it, and I'm going to remind you, ladies, right, before we continue.
Oh, yeah.
And I just thank Christine for coming back online. Thank you so much. We're perfect now and listening. Thank you so much. She is one of our biggest supporters as well, and very much involved with Her Story Matters. And she's based in Kenya, so she's watching you from Kenya. She's so cool. Yeah. So thank you so much about sharing that again. And we're going to be talking about the refugees. There's such a huge misconception about refugees, and people assume that refugees get everything they want and that people leave their countries at will. And usually it's not the case. People leave because of war and being displaced and many other reasons. And Laura today is going to share about why they left where she was born, and her story is so compelling, right? And can you just tell us where you were born, Laura?
I was actually, my family's from Laos, and I was actually born in Thailand after my family escaped from Laos. Our country is in Laos. It is, a lot of people do not know what Laos is, surprisingly, because the history books keep us out of it. But Laos was a huge part of the Vietnam War, where we were heavily bombed. We're one of the largest and the most bombed country per capita. So they bombed for 9 years. The bombs came down, and there's still cluster bombs that are there that are killing children and farmers or anybody playing outside. People are losing their limbs because of the bomb. There was a secret war on our country by the CIA, and the goal was to keep the communists, the North Vietnam, from advancing to the South Vietnam. So our small country was heavily bombed. And at the end of the Vietnam War, the American troops pulled out. And so the communists invaded our country when we didn't have the support of the American troops there anymore. The communists took over our country, and that's when they started invading and capturing people that were against their new regime. They were capturing all of the people that supported the old royal Lao government, and they wanted to put them through these re-education camps so that they can be brainwashed and taught the new regime, taught the new rules of Laos. And a lot of people were so loyal to the old governor of Laos, they did not like the new government, so they would escape. Most people lost their lives. Some were tortured. I had a couple of uncles that one was buried alive in front of the villagers. I mean, they tortured you, and they led by fear. You know, another uncle was captured, and he was basically used for target practice, and he was, taken down. My father, on the other hand, he, at the end of the war, he brought my pregnant mother and her son and my brother over to Thailand. And in Thailand, her parents lived in Thailand. So my dad brought her over there to visit family, and he came back to his teaching position. And at that time, they captured him. They considered him a spy, especially because he was a teacher, especially because since he was a teacher, he was part of the government of the old Royal Laos. And so they captured him, took him captive, and they called it a re-education camp, but it was a camp where a lot of men that were captured were either killed, tortured, or whatever they did to them. My father, probably having my mother and brothers on his mind, he basically fought for his life. I mean, he did whatever they needed him to do until he can figure out his escape plan. And my mother had no idea he was captured. So after 2 years, she probably lost hope that he was even alive. And so my father, he was captured, and after a couple of years of gaining their trust, they put him in a less secured area. So they had him as a security guard in the capital of Laos. And during that time, he had a little bit of freedom, not so much. They didn't give you all of your freedom, but he had a little bit of freedom where he could talk to the civilians, and he met some of his friends, and they would, periodically meet up and plan their escape. And so finally, the day of the escape came. The friends made a fake ID for him, and they met at their spot. And with the fake ID, he ran for his life. He disguised himself, got on the bus, and used the fake ID to get on the bus. And as soon as they rode past a river, my father jumped off of the bus, and he swam across the river. Like, they walked for about 5 days in the jungle, escaping, trying to hide and escape. And then one of the fathers left a small boat with food and things. That's how they were able to get away. And then they got over to Thailand and reunited with my mother. So I was the love child. So I was born straight into poverty. I don't have a birth certificate.
Wow.
Yeah. Yes. So we lived in the refugee camp for 2 years. Homeless. I don't remember, but just thinking about my parents and what they did for us, that's why it brings me to tears. So just hearing the stories and seeing my picture, I look like the poster child, that you would see on the cameras, on the commercials today, trying to raise money. I was that poster child. I was that starving child. I was the one that, had, my skin, the camps were so filthy that my skin was rotting. My dad mentioned, and, and I still have craters on my head from just being in such a poor condition, just being in such a harsh condition. And, so we we had almost 2 years before we were finally sponsored. We were sponsored by the First Presbyterian Church in Kingsport, Tennessee, bless their hearts. I read through all of the letters and all of the refugee paperwork, and they were hesitant. They were hesitant about sponsoring a refugee, especially a refugee family. It was 5 of us, and they had to commit to bringing these people over, bringing us over, and they had to commit to helping us, get on our feet. And so they were hesitant about doing that, and just reading their articles and things that they wrote about us, they basically said that they made that decision because of their faith in God, and that as desperate of a need that we as refugees needed, they couldn't turn their backs on us. And so that's the reason that they, went ahead and did it, which I'm so thankful for them for doing that. We came here in the middle of winter. Our only possession in hand was a bag of whatever belongings we had, because we were homeless. I mean, we were in the camps, but we didn't have any belongings. And whatever we wore, we had sandals, shorts, and a tank top in the middle of the winter, with just $40 and a dream. That's what we came to America with, just $40 and a dream. Yeah.
I mean, just hearing you speak and kind of like watching you get emotional about that moment when, because you were born in transition, basically. You were born in between 2 really tough places. And I just remember these pictures that we've been seeing of children refugees, and kind of like you describing how you had issues with your skin and everything else, because these are things that I don't think actually know, because all we see is pictures, right? And it's so awful the way people think that refugees have it easy, because no one wants their child to live like that, for however long, because uncertainty and what you were wearing as well, and bearing in mind the weather, and you can get ill, and we have to also remember that many children don't make it, because when we talk about refugees, what people see is the adults. That's what people see, but that's not really the story of refugees. It's usually children. It breaks my heart when people, think, well, I can't allow, they can't allow the children in the country. I mean, where else are they supposed to go? And I'm so glad that the church took you in, because in reality, that's really what they're meant to do. That's the message for the church, is to feed the poor, the hungry, the orphans, and those in need. That's really what their purpose is for, and not what we really see it. And it's amazing that your parents went to the United States with $40. That's how many children with $40? That's barely enough. And how long ago was this?
This was in 1979. We came with in the middle of the crazy winter that they had here. Every time I mentioned 1979, everyone would always say, that's the year of the biggest snowstorm. And I'm like, yeah, we had only sandals in the middle of that, shorts in the middle of the freezing weather. So yeah, 1979 was when we came here to America.
Okay, so you've had all of those struggles before you actually get to America, and you get to America, and obviously with children, it's they have this innocence where it feels like everything's going to be okay now, because now we're not moving anymore. We've got somewhere to sleep, and we've got food and everything. But that story didn't end there for you. In fact, that was just the beginning. So tell us about your childhood, where you went to school, and your experiences, because it just gets worse, right?
Yes, it gets worse before it gets better, like it usually does. As a child, I didn't really know what I didn't know, so as poor as we were, I didn't know we were poor. I just knew that I had my family around and I had the love of my family around. I thought it was normal to live in a studio apartment with five of us. Plus, when we had other family members come over, they stayed with us. So sometimes we would have 14 people in a 2-bedroom apartment. I thought that was normal. I thought it was normal to have roaches crawling around. You just have to make sure you turn the lights off lights on, because the roaches will come out, so those things, I just thought it was normal to not have money and to get whatever you need. So my childhood, I went to bilingual school, of course, because my parents didn't speak English. So I had to learn how to speak English. And so I went to bilingual school with maybe about 20 other refugee children that also had the same journey. And some of them are still close friends till this day. But yeah, we went to a bilingual school where we were taught English. And I had the hardest time after going through that. I had the hardest time transitioning into a public school because all I knew was my family. We were always together, and so transitioning, I cried for my mother. They had to call her in so many times. They had to call her to come get me because I had a really hard time adapting to the public schools and, being around people that I wasn't really familiar with. And as I got a little bit older, I went to elementary school, and elementary school was a little hard for me. And I didn't know, like I said, I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know what racism was. I didn't know that. I just thought it was normal for other kids to bully me. But constantly, I hated recess because I didn't have a whole lot of friends. I was consistently bullied for not having the right clothes because we had hand-me-downs, or my mother, being a seamstress, bless her heart, she would piecemeal different fabrics together to make my clothes. And I would get teased for being Asian, Chinese. They didn't know what Laos was. Not a lot of people knew why we're here. Who are these Laotian people? Who are this Lao people? And so I would get teased a lot. It was every time, I was outside in recess, Chinese, Japanese, look at these, like all day long, And so I'm like, okay. And one day I tried to play double dutch with these girls, and I'm like, oh, that looks so fun. Like, can I try? And they're like, no, we can't play with you. You're Chinese, So I cried. I walked away and I cried, and I'm like, they won't play with me. So most of the time I would be sitting on like the sidewalk and counting the hours and waiting for it to be time to go back. My principal, Mrs. Jones, was amazing. Sometimes I would ask to sit with her in recess. Like, can I just sit in here with you and draw? And so I would just sit there and draw in the classroom with her. So, and I would get kids in my class. I would get the spitballs thrown at me. And I would get my chairs pulled under me. I mean, they were really, really like terrible. But, that didn't really bother me because, kids, they're kids, right? But it wasn't until my 5th grade teacher did this to me that I was like really, really shocked. I had a 5th grade teacher, Mrs. Peterson. Our classroom, because the school was overcrowded, so our classroom was outside in the mobile home unit. We had like a mobile home that was a classroom. And so we were in between switching subjects. So we went from music to social studies, and I was still humming the song from the music class while everyone was talking. They were all, grabbing their stuff, talking, but she heard me. I was humming the music. And so she heard, and then she said it real loud, "Who's humming?" And I just looked and everyone pointed at me because I was the one humming. And so she's like, Laura, go to the office. And I'm like, okay. So I was kind of like, why, right? So I got up and she's like, no, turn around and say sorry to everyone. And I'm like, at that point, I'm like, okay. I'm like, sorry. I said it kind of sarcastically because at this point, I still didn't know why I was getting in trouble for singing. So then she opened the mobile home door and she shut it behind her. And I'm guessing so the other students wouldn't hear her. But she watched as I walked away towards the building of the school to go to the office. She's like, you don't deserve this country. She's shaking and screaming at me. I turned around. I was like, what? Did she just say that? You don't deserve this country. Her jiggling, her arms jiggling, you know, like. And so I was just in so much shock. You know, you're like a kid. And I'm like, why would I had no idea because I did not learn my story until maybe 5-6 years ago. So I had no idea, like, what does she mean? I don't deserve this country. Like, I live here just as she lives here. You know, I had no idea that racism even existed as a child. I didn't know what that was. So, you know, so I went to my principal and I explained to her what happened and what the teacher did and all that. I went home that day and I told my dad what happened. And, you know, I told him this is what my teacher said. And the way that my father described racism to me was, honey, you just have to understand that in America, there are some really, really great Americans. However, there are some Americans that do not like people with dark hair. So because of that, I grew up to be a cosmetologist, so I can color my own hair, no? But the way that he explained it was like so smooth. Like, how would I have known, you know, better as a child? But it was really awesome that, you know, that he said that, and I still remember it till this day. But I was really, really shocked, and just for me to still remember it, you know, here we are, maybe 30, 40 years later, that I still remember it. That it must have a really huge impact on me, what she said.
And I think we forget that everyone has a responsibility towards every single person. So it's not up to the government to make sure that you're safe. You know, it's up to every single person to make sure that everyone else is safe. And we have to literally be our brother's keeper. And I don't think people understand when we talk about being your brother's keeper. It's times like this with the teachers. It's time like when you're in school and you're getting bullied. I remember growing up, I grew up in Kenya, and we had so many refugees from Rwanda and Sudan and Somalia, and we didn't really think it was a big deal. You know, as a child, you just assimilate, you know, and I suppose it's also what people are being taught at home, because when you're quite young, you don't understand who a refugee is. You know, you don't even understand the difference because you just don't. It's normal. It's only when people get older that they begin to realize that people are different. You know, there's, you know, people are from different nationalities and people have got different features. But when you're kids, no one really points that out because we don't, as children, they don't see that. And these are conversations that people need to have in their homes, because you can tell, like, what goes on in their homes based on how children come and behave in school, right?
Absolutely.
So it has got bullying in it. And one of the other things that really shocked me was the issue of racism. I know we are at the peak of, you know, talking about race and talking about the Black race in particular. And I want us to look at a different perspective, because when we talk about race, we're talking about the Black experience, but there are people who actually get abused for standing with Black people. And I wanted to introduce that aspect today because that's what happened to you, because that's what you went through. Can you kind of like just tell us about, you know, your experience with this? Because you had racism based on how you look, and you also had racism because of the people you hang out with, which is, you know, double racism, right?
Yeah. It's true, and you know, the media plays a huge part of this, right? And us being in our our small community, you know, the Laotian community, we all struggled together. We all came here together, but a majority of us are really kind, loving people. And so, but the media portrays African Americans in such a bad light that we were growing up like told to be scared of African American people, you know? And so that's just the way it is, because you see it on the media and, oh, they're criminals. Oh, African American people are this or that, right? And so growing up, I was too Asian for the Americans. And then as I started becoming more and more Americans and Americanized, and my friends were white, were Spanish, were black, you know, and I started to get kind of like, by some people, not everybody was like this, but the few people that was enough to like really bother me, you know, the things that they did and said to me back then. And, you know, I've dated different races as well, but when I started dating this African American guy in high school, that was when I was now bullied for being too Americanized and going with the black guy. So, you know, so in school, I would be walking down the hallway, and there's just a few people. Like I said, most of our community, they're amazing, loving, caring people, but these few individuals were just like, just like we have today. There's so many caring people that embraces and wants that unity, and, you know, but there's those few racist people that make it so bad for the person. So going through high school, I hated high school. I almost flunked out of high school because I was just bullied consistently. Would be walking down the hallway, I would be called lover, like by so many different. Every time I turned the corner, you slut, you lover, you know. And so that was like the thing, right? Just nobody. Very few people accepted me. Very few people accepted me because I stepped out of the boundaries that their norm. So I stepped out of what they called their norm. And, you know, and I was more Americanized. And so I would get bullied at school. I would come home and get bullied. People were not allowed to be around me. People I grew up with, my friends, her father, don't hang out with that girl. You know, and so, you know, different things like that. And that really, as a child, it hurts you. It makes you think that you are like a failure. There's, you know, you don't feel that love from your community like you once did. And so that does something to your psychic, right? And so that caused me to run away. You know, I ran away at maybe 15 or 16 I was 15 or 16 years old. And I think when people saw me like years and years later, they probably did not know this part of my story. But at 15, 16, I ran away to Kansas City, hoping to live with my uncle down there because the guy that I was dating, he moved down to Kansas City. And so when I moved to Kansas City, my uncle's like, you are not staying here because you left home and you're so young. You need to go back home. So, but at that very important time of my life, being 15 or 16 years old, I needed love, I needed direction, I needed support, and I didn't receive it where I was living because, you know, people were not embracing the cultural differences, and so I moved away, and I was taking in, and I was embraced by my boyfriend's family at the time, my ex-boyfriend and his family, and Mama Sonia. I still, you know, that's still my Mama Sonia till this day. Grandma Bessie, they raised me. They took me in and they raised me and they loved on me. And, you know, and I lived with them. I ate with them. I went to church with them. I ate soul food. That's probably the first time I had soul food. And, you know, and that was like my family. That was my family. And I went to an all black inner city school, you know, with metal detectors. fights every day. And, you know, and that was my environment. That was my family, you know. So, but guess what? At the school, my grades got better. I had all A's. I was concentrated because I was concentrating more because I had that love and support. And that's what a child needs at that time. That's what a child needs at that time. Not hate and bitterness to push them away, but to love and embrace. But I appreciate my experience because it has made me the strong person that I am today. So I appreciate everyone for doing that, you know, and that I wouldn't be the person that I am today had I not gone through the storm, had I not gone through that experience. I wouldn't be who I am today.
Exactly. So what I'm curious about is kind of like you did mention that you didn't really know your full story until about 5 years ago. What would you say to that little girl in a camp right now? You know, scared, really cold, or that young girl who is who's just literally got into either America or United Kingdom or anywhere else that is meant to be safe. What would you actually say to that girl at that precise moment? What can we do as human beings to kind of like help them as well?
Yeah, so I would say the more that they have these conversations, the more that that they just embrace what's going on with the child inside and helping other people, helping educate other people around them, creating more education on diversity and on, you know, the cultural differences and how we could still love each other in despite of the differences. We're all still one, and we have to embrace our differences and maybe finding out like those challenges that they are having and helping them work through it, you know, and addressing those issues and educating them on what racism is. I didn't know what racism was. I didn't know that, you know, as a child, that age, you don't know that people don't like you because of the certain look that you have, and they're bullying you because of how you look. So just finding different things that they can do to help educate the students that, hey, you're going to have somebody that looks different than you, but here's what you can learn from them, or vice versa, you know.
And I think there's something that I read earlier with regards to the UN, and I just want to find it now because many people feel like, or they think that this is so far removed from them, but that is not true because statistics show different. So basically, according to the UN cites that the world has been experiencing the highest levels of displacement on record. It is believed by the end of 2018, we're in 2020 now, so it's believed by the end of 2018, around 70.8 million people worldwide had been forced out of their homes by conflict and persecution, right? So with your family, it was conflict and persecution. And to make matters worse, it was the CIA who are doing this, right? So it's not even like it was two countries fighting. It was literally the American government that was doing that. So we need to remember that as well. And we need to hold our governments accountable, because if we don't hold them accountable, then we have to deal with things like this. We have to deal with children being displaced. And it's horrific. You know, can you tell us about the psychological impact this had on you, like at that young age? If you can, I don't know if you can tap into that right now, because it seems like it's a long time ago. But what was this like? What psychological state at that time?
So all I remember is growing up, my parents would always tell me how hard they work. And I didn't understand at the time, but they always told me education, education. And I never understood. I'm like, okay, I get it. Get your education. But they're like, look at us. We work so hard. And my dad would show me his burns on his face and his burns from being a welder. And my mom would show me her wrist, you know, because from carpal tunnel, because they both worked factory jobs all their lives here in America to try to survive and raise 3 children without knowing the language. And so I just remember, you know, growing up, my parents would always tell me, if you don't want to work hard like us, then you need to get your education so you don't have to be stuck in the factory, you know, in a factory job. But
Yeah.
I do want to say one thing as far as like the CIA, the war, and all of that. Obama was the first president to go back to Laos on his last term to acknowledge what the American troops did on our country. And so he designated 90 million, I believe, over the course of some years to help initiate the cleaning up of the bombs that the CIA left. And so I just, you know, my thing right now is the more people that can learn about our story and why we're here, the better. And that's why I'm speaking up, and that's why I'm sharing our story, because, you know, people do, like you said, people have a misconception that, oh, we came here to take over the resources, and we came here, we were like given everything handed to us. No, we were poor just as everyone else here, and we had to work hard, and we had to get our education, and we had to do all the things that are put in place that's available, and use the resources to be able to overcome our adversities. And so that's part of the reason why everything that I do, it is to share and to help people be more knowledgeable on the Lao community, and why, if you hear somebody say they're Lao, you'll know what it is, because a lot of times people ask me, are you Filipino? Are you da, da, da? I'm like, no, I'm Lao. What the heck is that? And then I have to say, you know, King of the Hills neighbor is Laos, you know, so we're like King of the Hills neighbor. So I have to explain like that. And so I want more people to know our Lao journey. And I'm actually a part of a movie called the Lao Redemption Movie that it does just that. So it'll be out on Netflix as well. Once we're done with it, it'll be out on Netflix. It's on Facebook if you want to see it. There's a Facebook page set up called the Lao Redemption Movie. And on the profile, you'll see me and my family with the 3 kids, with my parents' 3 kids when we first came to America. But the movie is about 5 CIA agents that went undercover as gangsters to break into the building, the federal building, to find out who initiated the bombings on our country. So, and Obama, we have a Obama lookalike that plays in there too. So it's pretty cool.
I have actually seen that picture. He does look like him with the ears and all. It's very weird. I think I would like for you to kind of like explain to people exactly where Laos is. Because I don't think people get it, and it's such a tiny place. Because when we had the conversation, I was like, okay, I've never heard of this place, and I was like, Harriet, play it cool, right? And I was thinking to myself, oh my goodness, how come I don't know about this? And I went and I read up about it, and it was very interesting. So can you just explain to us, because some people might not know exactly where this is?
It is a very small country. It's a very small country. Right in between North and South Vietnam, and it's like Southeast Asia. So if you look on the map, you'll see Laos. There's a tail. There's a round. It's like this, and then there's a tail. Well, the tail of it, you'll see on there. It says Ho Chi Minh Trail, and so that's where the trouble came in. We got bombed all up and down that area because the CIA had attempted to keep the North from advancing to the South Vietnam. So that's where most of the bombs happened, around that area. And so my father, he was a freedom fighter back in Laos, and they called them freedom fighter because the American troops, when they were in Laos, trying to keep the communists out of the country, they recruited and trained the civilians. My dad was a teacher during the day. At night, he would disguise and come into the jungle shooting enemies out. And so he was part of the freedom fighter, which now he is actually recognized in America as a veteran. So on July 19th of every year, they have actually designated that to be the annual Laos Memorial Day. So the city of Elgin, the mayor of Elgin, and the state of Illinois has declared July 19th, which is coming up. So my dad gets to march and stuff in his uniform. He gets to do a parade. I don't know with COVID right now, but typically every year they would have a parade to honor these soldiers because a lot of them lost their lives protecting U.S. soldiers and, you know, protecting outposts and things like that. And so now they've recognized that. And he had this really touching plaque. It's a really touching plaque. And when I read it, tears rolled down my eyes, the way that it's worded. And it's just so amazing, you know, the history and the things that my father went through at only, 30? He was about 25 to 30 years old going through that.
Wow. Yeah. I wanted to find out how all of this kind of like affected your family. I know obviously you got closer because you went through so much crossing over and you know, with the poverty and having to live so close to each other, basically that makes you really close. I remember growing up, sometimes we'd have cousins over and you'd have 20 people in a really tiny living room. So, and you get to be really close, you know, there's kind of like no boundaries and everything, but you don't really care. But how did this affect your family, and how did it affect your dad especially? Because
I think for my dad, you know, when I learned about my story, it brought out some emotions from him because I actually, first he didn't want to talk about it. And then I'm like, listen, Dad, you are getting older and you need to tell me. So I recorded him on a 2-hour call. That's how I learned of all of this. And, you know, he had to hold back tears going through describing all of this. But I think for us, what helped put us through is the love of the strangers that became our family. We had so many people that were in the refugee camps with us that we met along the way. Some were strangers that just became family because we had the journey together and we just became super close. And even when we lived here in America, you know, some of us didn't speak English. If somebody had good news or if somebody knew something or had a resource, then they would share it with each other. And like we had out of the whole community, one person with a van. And so my dad didn't have a car. He wasn't driving yet. He didn't have his license. So he would ride his bike everywhere, rain, sleet, snow. He would ride his bike to his ESL classes. And sometimes he would walk with me on the stroller. He would walk to his ESL classes. So, or his, you know, getting his welding certification, he would walk to the schools. But the one person had a van and they would pack that van up every Saturday and they would make different stops. They would stop at the laundromat, then they would stop at the grocery store. Everyone got their groceries and they would, you know, and so they had this routine going on. And if somebody had a job or something, they would come and share it. And we helped to lift each other up. And that was the only way to survive, was to work as a team and to help each other advance, because you're only as strong as your weakest link, right? So every time somebody had something good, or one time we had we call him uncle. I don't think we're really related, but family isn't always blood. And so their house got caught on fire and they lost everything. It was a family of like 8, I believe. So we moved them into, at the time we had a 2-bedroom apartment. So we moved them in until they can get on their feet. So my father, my mom and dad, I think what this taught them and what I've learned watching them growing up is that no matter what they had, even if they had nothing. And that's why that's how I am today too, because I've got those values from them. No matter if you have nothing, you help the next person, you pay it forward. And so he's always giving back, even when we didn't have anything. So I think that's how, as a community, we survived and we got through it by doing that. And I think it is still touchy for them, like the subject. They're scared to tell their story because the communist has instilled so much fear in them that they're scared to talk. They're scared to share. And that could be why we're not in the history book, because no one was told to talk about it. You know, everyone was scared because the communists had threatened them and had showed them so much fear that not a lot of people talk about it. Now my generation, now that we're older and we're curious, now we're bringing out the education, and now we're, showing a little bit more on what our parents went through and sharing their stories more now.
Definitely. So I just want to see if anyone has any question for Laura before we wrap up. Because I've had her here since, oh my goodness, we had a whole drama series, right? We had a whole theater performance at the back, right? And we tried to go on live at 2:00, but we couldn't because there was so many issues with technology. But we're here now, and Laura is a bit tired as well because she had to keep on going back and forth. But if you have any questions for her, this would be a great time to kind of like tell her what you think. And I know, Laura, you haven't, I don't know if you've been able to see kind of like the messages on the screen, and people have been so supportive, and it's just so amazing that we have this group of human beings who think and feel the way they do. And I'm sure you're going to see the comments after because you're busy talking. And you've got amazing friends, you've got an amazing support system as well, which is so good. It's good when we can embrace each other like that, regardless of our backgrounds and where we're from. And one of the things that I would really love is to sit down with your dad and kind of like just hear the whole story, because I know there's like that fear going on, but I would really love to kind of like capture that raw emotion, because I can imagine as a parent, and especially as a man, you have to make sure that your family is safe. And what was going on in his mind when he was captured, and worrying about the family, worrying about your mom, and getting to speak to your mom, just finding out how she kept it together and not hearing from your dad. I mean, it's insane. When we think about these things, there were no phones. There was nothing. You're not able to kind of like send a text, babe, I'm okay, because you just couldn't. And you literally would imagine the worst. We just don't realize how easy we have it now, right? And it's just kind of like hearing that and listening to the support system that you had. And I think we can all learn from that, which is family is not always blood. And it could be anyone, and just embracing different people. It doesn't matter how they look, or it doesn't matter where they're from. It's just like looking at them as human beings. And I think what is really behind all of this racism and the bullying is the fear of not knowing what this looks like. It's kind of like the fear of, oh, I've never encountered this. And there's usually like a curiosity to, oh, I wonder what this is. Let me find out. And there's that other side, which is, oh, I am afraid. I don't know what this is. I don't want to attempt it. I don't want to try it. This looks scary to me. And I kind of like think it's about, bridging that with conversations like this and awareness. And your story is so important at this time in the whole world, really. It's not just in America, it's in the whole world. It's a story of survival. It's a story of love. It's a story of, two different communities coming together, because you've got beautiful children with someone who's not from your own community. And it's also about introducing your community that was fearful of the Black people, and introducing the Black people to your community and seeing like, okay, these are not horrible people, they're amazing people, and getting to kind of like interact. So I think that's very special, like what your family has been able to do, what you've been able to do as well with your story and sharing it today. And I want to see what, okay, so Dolores said, you seem so confident now having your own business and family. How will you protect your psyche and your children? Wow, that's like deep. Okay. All right. Okay. I'm glad I'm not the one who has to answer that. There's layers to that.
I have learned over the years that what doesn't kill me makes me stronger. So I am like, it's on. Like, whatever comes my way, I'm still confident that I'm going to overcome it, because I have in the past. So my past taught me how strong I really am and how strong I really can be. And hopefully my children can see that in me, and also, learn through watching me. And I think they already have. I think I'm trying at my best to be a very good role model to them, and sharing those values, and kind of having them learn the values as well. As far as the racism goes in our community, I feel like that has gotten a lot better from the time, 30 something years ago, when I was in high school. It's gotten so much better, even 10 years later when I came back to my hometown, and seeing the mixture of race, and seeing, like, my whole family right now, I don't think any of us are married to the same race. I don't think any of us are married to the same race. So it's much more accepted now than it was before. And so I think that's a blessing beneath it all. And even, funny story, even one of the girls that called me a lover back in high school, when I came back 10 years later, I was doing promotions in Chicago, and I was doing a promotion, and I met one of the rappers from Crucial Conflict. His name is Hart. And he's like, "Oh, you're Laotian. I wonder if you know this girl, da 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 da." I don't want to, bust her out. And I was like, as a matter of fact, I do. Oh, that was my girlfriend. And in my mind, I'm like, really? Well, she bullied me for dating, outside of my race. And so, but I didn't tell him that. But yeah, so I mean, it's more embraced now than it ever was before. And I see a lot of people in my community fighting for Black Lives Matter, and and uniting with that, and educating our older folks that may or may not be educated, about what's going on, and helping them to learn to embrace the diversity as well. And so I think it's come a really, really long way. I don't think my children have a whole lot to worry about, the things that I worried about back then. And so that's a really true blessing in disguise.
So have you actually sat down and spoken to your children about your story, and what was it like? What was their response? Because that's a totally different generation.
Funny you asked that, because I have and tried to, but just like I was at their age, they're just like, phew, it just like, it kind of goes over their head. I think they understand, but maybe they don't. And then sometimes they'll hear about something like, oh, they'll get surprised about it, and I think maybe when they get to the point where it becomes more important, like for me, I didn't really dive into my history until I was maybe in my 30s. That's when I'm like, oh, where, I had to do a book report for my husband, or he had to interview me for one of his college projects. And he's like, I have to interview someone from out of the country. I'm like, well, I don't know my history, so that's when I dug in, and I found more than I can ever imagine when I started digging in my history. It was like so heartfelt, the things that I discovered, just from my father. He sent me a phone number to my sponsors that I hadn't talked to in 35 years. She sent me this whole packet of information filled with my letters and refugee paperwork, and pictures and newspaper articles that we were in. And so at the time, it was 2014, when I learned of all of this, I dropped everything. My brothers and I dropped everything when we learned one of the sponsored had passed away, dropped everything to go to his funeral. And the newspaper company found out the refugee children were back in town. So they did a Where Are They Now 35 years later newspaper. So we walked out of our hotel and there we were in the front page of the paper again. Like, wait, 35 years later, we're still in the front page of Kingsport Times, so that was really interesting. Like they did a news update on where we're at. But I was just really shocked in what I read through all the articles that I read, and just amazing people that reached out, strangers that helped us. I remember reading in the newspaper article about me. I guess I had a concussion when I was little. I was playing with my brother and the door hit my head. In the newspaper, that's when I learned of my concussion. And I learned that the Midland family did a car wash to raise money for my hospital bill. So this was so now all I think about is how can I pay it forward? How can the amazing angels that are now, rest in heaven, they can look down and be proud of what they did, be proud of them listening to God's direction and helping this family in desperate need, myself. How can I pay it forward so their work was not in vain, that they brought me here for a reason. They brought me here, they helped us and rescued us for me to rescue and help other people. And that's why everything that I do, it's all about giving back. It's all about helping people rise up, because if it wasn't for the help of strangers, I wouldn't be where I am today.
Exactly. So that amazing question was from Bonita. And
I am Bonnie.
Shout out. So it's, thank you so much for sharing all of that. I just wanted to find out what it is for you, what it's like for you right now. I know most of this is in the past, and you've had time to process everything that's gone on with your life, and kind of like what is it, how is it for you right now, and kind of like talk to us about your book before we wrap up, because that would be an interesting book, right?
Yeah, so for me right now, I just felt this tug back in December, just this inner voice, I believe it's from God, that I needed to share my story, and I needed to get my story out there so I can help touch and inspire other people, particularly women, so I can help them. And so back in December, I just took a huge leap of faith, and I quit my corporate job. And this is what I'm inspired to do right now, is to try to help as many people with whatever resources that I have, so they can also be successful and reach their full potential. Because I went from an almost high school dropout, a person that was told that my future was a failure, the person that was told, you're not going to amount to nothing, the person that was told, oh, stay away from her, she's a bad influence, to a person, to having a successful career, leading top organizations, traveling the country, coaching and training doctors, coaching and training growing medical centers, growing dental centers, and running a campus leader for us, running a beauty school and different schools, healthcare schools. I have done pretty well in my career for all the things, despite of all the things that was put and labeled on me, I didn't allow that to determine who I am. And so I've had quite a huge success in what I did. And I just want to be able to help show other women that their past does not determine their future. I was once upon a time a single mother on Section 8 that was kicked out of a 2-bedroom apartment that was already low income housing. I was on food stamp. I didn't have much. And so I want to be able to share and help women see that their current situation is not their final destination. I've made six-figure income jobs. I've done this. I've also been on public assistance, living check to check. So I know that it can be done. And I want to so bad share with women and let them know that there is hope for them. They just have to have the right mindset, and they have to believe that it can happen for them as well. And so helping them build that confidence to be able to help them. And that's what I do in my book. My book, 14 Steps to, it's an ebook. Eventually, I'm going to do $40 and a Dream. That's going to be a little bit bigger because it's going to cover way more. But 14 Steps to Living Your Dream Life, even if you are a refugee. It's 14 steps. It spells out self-confidence. And in each step, I just share a little bit of parts and pieces of my life and share a little inspirational things that the readers can do to help them live out their confidence, live out confidently, and live out their dream life. So that is what the ebook is about. So yeah, that's what's going on right now.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your story. And as you were speaking, I was thinking to myself, well, I should probably give her about 2 minutes to kind of like encourage and empower the women who might be watching this. They might be going through any issue in their life. So I just want to give you 2 minutes to kind of like show them what you're made of.
If you are going through what you're going through, embrace that. Embrace it. Because if I embrace all of my failures. If it was not for the things that I went through, I wouldn't have been able to find out and learn how strong I really was. And so just take all of that as a learning lesson and really celebrate your failures and don't be fearful of them. Fall forward and continue to know that that is not the end. All of your problems are temporarily. You will get through it. Without a doubt, you will get through it. So just plan for what's to come and forget about what you're going through right now because it's only temporary.
That's brilliant. I love what you said about fall forward. Because we don't really think like that. We always think about falling, and in our mind, we're always thinking, oh, falling backwards, but you can fall forwards, which is really good. So you can fall forwards. You're allowed to fall forwards.
Exactly.
Thank you so much.
And there is a saying, there's a saying out there, failure is not an option. But I go against that. I say failure is an option because you need the failures to help you be strong, help you change things. If you weren't put in certain circumstances, you're going to be too comfortable and you're not going to make the changes that you need to grow, right? So embrace your failure. So failure is an option.
So Christine says, thank you. Ayana says, amazing, love you. And oh my gosh, you've got so much love on her. And Bonita says, fall forward. Yes, definitely. And I think it's Bonita who invited me to the States. I've just invited myself and inserted that you invited me. I'm looking forward to meeting all of you amazing ladies. Thank you so much for making time. And I just want to speak to all the ladies out there. If you have a story to share, you can share it. Remember, it's about empowering other women. It's about encouraging other women. It doesn't matter where you are in your life. As you see with Laura, she started out, really rough. But she has gone through all of that, and she's an amazing woman. She's resilient, and she's just really built up so much within herself. She's used everything that she's gone through to kind of like encourage her and build her up to be able to encourage other people. So I just want to let people know that you can share your story. We've been getting emails about people wanting to share their story, but they don't have sad things to share. And this is not just about sharing sad things. I'm just going to let you know that. These are people who are willing to share their story. So if it's an inspirational story, we want to hear it. We'll still be doing this live. And, we love speaking to women all over the world. And we love hearing from you because you kind of like feed us with the energy to kind of like keep giving. And I want to thank all of you for showing up today. Thank you, Grace, for showing up. Thank you, all of you, for showing up. And I want to ask you all a favor. Please, please, please share this video to other women so that they can be inspired, so that they can hear Laura's story and see if Laura can do it, so can they, right? And they can come on our page and see other amazing women sharing their stories, because there's some, amazing women, phenomenal women who've shared their stories. We've got a magazine as well. The women can be featured on the magazine if they want. Inspirational stories, success stories, we share all of that. And we've also asked Laura to share her story on the magazine, and she said yes. So it's going to be a different dynamic from what she shared today, because today was very personal. You can kind of like get to hear the emotions and kind of like walk, mentally walk through that vision. It's kind of like you can see the father in the jungle, and you can see her with the rushes on the face, and picture all of that. You can picture her being bullied, and you can picture her running away with her backpack. You can picture all of that stuff because she described it to us. And reading a different aspect of her story will be different, and it's going to be more of motivational and kind of like coaching, because we want women to make it. We want women to be at the top, and we want to see more women empowered, because the future really depends on women. The economy, the humanity really depends on women, because women are, we're very intuitive, and we're very sensitive towards other people's needs. So we want to see more women doing amazing stuff. If you have a short story to share, please send your story or send us an email at stories@HerStoryMatters.com and share this, please. Thank you so much, Laura, for sharing your story and being here.
Thank you for having me.
And, thank you so much, because you also, you have a family thing going on, and you've taken time out. So we really appreciate that. And so much love to your dad and your mom, and just kind of like nudge them and tell them I'd love to hear their story one day.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
Bye-bye.